Hi, everyone, and welcome to Build Today. I am Peter Vanderloo. As a veteran, I want to wish all veterans Happy Veterans Day. In fact, we have an amazing panel here today composed of accomplished veterans. We're going to have a conversation about service after service and what that means to each of them. As always, thank you to Suzanne Lindberg and the wonderful team here at Build for their support of veterans, not just today, but all throughout the year. Please welcome our panel of veterans. Mike, I'm going to start with you. In fact, I'm going to ask each of you, tell us a little bit about your service. How long you served, where you served.
Peter, I served 35 years in the Army, so I'm probably the oldest guy on the panel today. I graduated from West Point in 1980, commissioned as an infantry officer, and served 23 different assignments over 35 years, and got service a couple different countries. Company command in Berlin when the wall was still up. We just celebrated the 30th anniversary of the fall of the wall. Commanded a battalion in Korea, and I was privileged to serve a brigade in combat with the 101st Airborne Division, 3rd Brigade of the 101st, and I kept getting promoted, and 35 years later, my wife and I said, time to go, so it was a great time. I really enjoyed it. Everything good in my life came from the Army.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it. Alan?
Hey, thanks, Peter. I'm Alan Reyes. I am a 1990 graduate of the Naval Academy and served in the U.S. Navy on active duty for 8 years, and then continued to serve in our Navy as a Navy reservist after 9/11. And so in my service in the Navy, I've served across many different disciplines. First started my career in the Pacific, on board a fast attack nuclear submarine, patrolling both the Pacific and in the Gulf as well. In my reserve world, I've spent a couple of deployments. Quite interestingly, as a Navy reservist, we spend a lot of our reserve deployment time with our Army and our Marine Corps brethren. You don't put a lot of reservists at sea. So I've been able to do that for the last 21 years now. So still serving in the reserves, which I am honored to do. Our reserves across all the different branches provide a great connection between our private sector and our military service members as well.
Awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it. Actually, what's kind of neat is we found out we were neighbors back in Leesburg, Virginia. So
that's right.
It's kind of a neat little connection there. Chuck, please tell us about your service.
Yeah, I'm Chuck Hodges. I enlisted in the Florida National Guard back in 1985. Did 3 years in the Guard there, and then in 1988 was commissioned an infantry officer out of the University of Central Florida, the 2018 College Football National Champions, and then spent the next 27 years on active duty as an infantry guy. Commanded 123 Infantry, actually ripped out with Mike in Mosul, Iraq back in 2003, and then ended my career as the Joint Base Commander at Joint Base Lewis McChord.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you so much. Tommy.
So I'm the unicorn here. I'm not an officer. I'm an enlisted guy.
You're the guy that gets it done.
Yeah, so I served 20 years on active duty in the Signal Corps. Did a tour in Afghanistan, 2 tours in Iraq. Proud to be able to come home and continue to serve service members at Verizon.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. You know, as we talked about, one of the things I think we really want to know is, as you look across all the military services and the veterans who are transitioning, where's the biggest need?
Well, I think for really transition. I mean, we all are arguably in the transition business, and I think when veterans leave military service, they want something similar. They want to be challenged. They want a purpose, but sometimes that transition is difficult. So I think whether you're wounded, ill, or injured, or whether you're 3-year initial term infantryman that wants to get out and continue to serve, they're all looking for an effective and a smooth transition.
Yeah, I would agree with Mike. Transition is clearly one of the most important things that we want to do as the communities that are around our service members and their families. We've got a couple 100,000 service members making that transition every year. And as we all know, when you serve in the military, you're in a little bit of a different environment. But you're in that environment as well as your family. So I know all of our organizations, certainly the USO, provide that transition support across multiple dimensions. It certainly is about making sure that people have the path forward for a new career out after the military, but it's just as important for their family, their spouses, to have that same path forward across many dimensions. It could be employment, education, it could be about housing, it could be navigating the VA benefit system. So being able to support our service members make that transition and their families make that transition is one of the most important things that we as the nonprofit organizations that support our military and our veterans do.
And I think more specifically, it's the biggest challenge for the question was, what do you want to do? Because so many of our service members are doing jobs, there's not a one-on-one translation in the civilian world. So when they do get out, it's, all right, what do you want to do next? Well, I'm not real sure what I want to do next. I need to do some exploring to figure out what it is I want to do. And on the flip side of this, from the company side of the house, companies often, the biggest challenge is they look at a resume, and the resume they see does not look like any resumes from the civilian side. So look at those resumes going, wow, this person doesn't match up. So I think the challenge we have on the company side is getting companies to think more broadly about the service members and not necessarily judge them purely by that piece of paper, but actually sit down and talk with them. Because like we all know, once you meet a veteran and once they're working inside their companies, they blow people away.
And I'll just add to really what Chuck was saying. I think it's really important from an education standpoint is getting past the resume, getting a good understanding of knowing that person behind the paper, right? So that's something that is extremely important. I think that's where we've been successful at Verizon. Hiring managers and leadership have challenged their hiring managers to hire differently and recruit differently, which gives veterans more exposure. So having close-knit networking events that are going to allow them to speak and communicate about their skills and what they have to bring to the table is extremely important.
Yeah. So I heard a couple themes going in there, right? There's a sort of helping the veterans transition in terms of understanding what they did in the military and how that translates over. But there's also the idea around it's not just the veteran anymore, right? Now we're really understanding and appreciating, I think, more than we've ever had before about families. And so it's great to see all the efforts. And Alan, I know the USO really does focus on families a lot of times. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing is about the USO, we're so honored to have served our military for going on 80 years pretty soon, right? So we're 78, going on 79, soon to be 80 years alongside our service members as they've deployed in harm's way since World War II. But Peter's right. There's an important obligation that we have to support our families as well. Our spouses that are making that transition as well from base to base, having challenges with their own career aspirations. I know that all of our organizations are involved in that, but also their family members. Personal story here. My father was also in the Navy. Fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, right? And
we won't hold that against you.
Yeah,
Go Army.
We'll talk
Army.
after
Go
December
Army.
14th there, Tom.
Be Navy.
All right.
But but he was at sea when my mother was carrying me, and he didn't get a chance to meet me until I was about a month and a half old. And so you think about the stresses on the family members as well in those deployed environments, right? That service member might be deployed on a submarine, might be out there on the pointy end with the Army or in a forward operating base with the Marine Corps. Those family members are having that more difficult time back at home trying to adjust to that new normal without the service member. So we have great programs that generate support for those families, help them build their resiliency, help connect them to their service members. We spend quite a bit of money every year trying to make sure that there is a live internet or a phone connection for that service member to get back to their family in the 220 locations we have around the world.
I always love the term, thank you for your service. And people always say, thank you for your service. My response is, thank you for paying your taxes. But if you really want to thank somebody, go thank those spouses and kids. I said, because none of us were drafted. We all volunteered to join a particular service, so it was an honor to do so. It's those family members, those children, they didn't join. They just happened to be, in my wife's case, have very bad eyesight, and in my kids' case, just were born into it all. But they're the ones that we really need to thank. And I know all our efforts here are focused on the service members, but as well as the military spouses, because they are a very, very talented group out there, and the transition is not just the service member. It's a family change for all of them out there, and so focusing on and recognizing and remembering the military spouses and those families are critical, especially on Veterans Day, when everyone wants to thank us, and I'm like, don't thank me, go thank my wife and kids.
And I don't think you caught on Chuck's wife has bad eyesight, obviously. So, and I think that was intentional. He said that. On the other hand, my wife has great eyesight, 20/20.
Just
Whoa.
20/20 eyesight. Just saying. But no, I mean, the sacrifices that family members, assume when you deploy, same type of thing. I think we've all been in this situation. My daughter was 10 days old when I left for 18 months for Iraq. It's a sacrifice that, I am completely thankful for. Organizations like the USO, the Wounded Warrior Project, Hiring Heroes, have really, focused externally on not just the veterans, which I think is extremely, extremely important. You're their voice. So I think that that's something that, family members need to have. And it's a good opportunity for you all to, to showcase and help them, get that visibility.
Thanks, Tommy. I think that's right. I think all of our organizations understand that our family members are a critical element of that service members' individual strength and then our services strength. So we all are committed to making sure that we're supporting our service members, but also more, as important, their families as well. And oftentimes, I think spouses in general might think, hey, well, the Wounded Warrior Project or, Hiring Our Heroes or the USO, oh, that's for my service member spouse. That's not to support me. But just as Chuck said, right? I mean, we have an obligation to take care and to thank and show gratitude and to support those spouses and those family members through our own programs as well. So if there's anything we can do on Veterans Day is to make sure that all of those spouses and their family members out there know that we're out there for them as well.
One of the things that I think we've all talked about is the need for effective transition comes with overcoming fear of isolation. Many of our warriors in particular, those suffering from invisible wounds of war, will isolate. If you create programs that not only serve them, but meet the needs of their families as well, you then get family engagement, family involvement, kid involvement. It's like today's parade. We had 1,000 people in the parade. Half of them were family members and kids. So, if you make the connection events fun for the family, the warrior will follow. And then you use that as a venue to connect them with other programs and services that meet their needs wherever they are. And then that really smooths out that transition and helps them achieve the same level of success they had in civilian life that they enjoyed when they were in the military.
Yeah, and what about that parade? Oh my gosh. It was the first time I had marched in the New York City Veterans Day Parade. That was really cool. You guys were all
awesome.
there, right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Amazing.
Just amazing. I mean, I felt the love and the support. I think that's really what we're talking about, right? Is that, so here we've served and we're feeling the community coming around us, right? I know, Tommy, you do a lot of things to try to reach out, non-traditional things necessarily, to try to reach out and help folks feel like, hey, they belong. They're part of, we want them to be part of our community. So tell us a little bit about those, if you don't mind.
So I think from an employee resource group standpoint, I mean, Verizon has a great employee resource group. And one of the things we need to do is continue to advocate, one, for ourselves, also tell our stories, and then help others that are inside, so to speak, our ranks, really, come out and show that they're a veteran. Today was a great example of it. I've never been so proud of being in this company as I was today, seeing, 100 veterans marching in the parade, and like the actual love of brotherhood and sisterhood there was just amazing. It just makes you feel, just like on top of the world. And I think that's what we're trying to build, and that's what we breed from a culture standpoint at Verizon. So we continue to do that, and I think we're going to continue to get better at it. And it's an example for other companies to follow. Yeah.
Can I add on that, Tommy? I mean, you bring up a really good point. Think about the ready rooms or the wardrooms or the places that we have served as veterans, or when we were in service, and the camaraderie and the esprit de corps and the teamwork that you build in those military outfits. I gotta believe Verizon, other organizations, other companies out there are thriving, are thirsting for that same kind of spirit that they have in their companies, right? So, on Veterans Day, when we talk about great companies that are making opportunities exist for those veterans, there's also that it's not just a return on investment for the individual veteran. It's the same thing for that company, right? You're building these teams, building this cadre of people that know how to work together, collaborate, and get that mission done.
And I think that the service after service piece, the great work that Tommy does at Verizon with their veteran resource group, is you see companies around the country. That's part of our responsibility as veterans. The service after service. It's not only the isolation that Mike talked about is on the veteran side, but it's our job to reach out to those communities and our fellow employees because, again, less than 1% of the population serves. So we have a responsibility to help educate and talk about the military, the values we bring, and the great Americans that we had the privilege to serve with over our career.
And it's not, so you say, Tom, and I think that's what I've loved about being in, I have a phenomenal team. I have people that, it's infectious. Helping other people whether you're in the military, outside of the military, it's infectious to help people and give back, right? So when people understand that you're sacrificing something besides yourself, it's good. It's good for the world. It's good for the community. It's good for everything, right? So I think just being that example and lighting those little fires throughout the company, that's a great way for all of it. I think we're continuing to do that from a service after service, right? Just telling our story and really starting to continue to kindle those flames.
I mean, if you think about the numbers, 1% of Americans, young men and women, serve in the military today. And those numbers, how do you inspire young people to serve? It's from veterans that effectively transition, role model great behavior in life after the military, service after service, that then gets the young people fired up and gets them to raise their hand and say, take me. I mean, look at the kids that were walking in the parade today. I can tell you that there's a whole bunch of those young people walking today in the parade and supporting from the sidelines that said, I want a piece of that. I want to be a piece of military service. And then life after that, obviously there's no duplicating the leadership lessons you learn while you're in uniform. Maybe not in the most friendly places, right? But the leadership lessons you learn in the military, regardless of your rank or service, are second to none.
I was going to say, related to this also, there's another meta reason here for making sure that veterans are making a successful transition into the private sector, obviously for them individually and for their companies, but really for us as a society, understanding when you bring service members with their stories of service back into the private sector, they really extol the virtues of serving our country. And, given the small numbers of folks that serve today, that's, I think, another thing that we as veterans, the Department of Defense, us as military organizations, need to make sure that we're helping bridge that military-civilian divide. There are so few people that understand what it means to serve and the value of that service. And so being able to inculcate service members after their service, family members that have gone through that life of sacrifice, and to understand the benefits and the values that we can continue to strive to have a strong military is absolutely important for us as well.
No, that's brilliant. And thank you. And actually, I think it's a great point to kind of transition into talking about maybe a little PSA for each of your organizations, right? I think it's helpful. And if I could start with you, Mike, can you tell us how Wounded Warrior Project, like what's your really call to action there and what are you guys doing?
So our goal is to inspire this generation of wounded warriors to be the most successful generation of wounded veterans in our nation's history. And that's an audacious goal. But we believe it's an achievable goal. We all know the numbers. 3.5 million Americans have served in uniform since 9/11. The attacks right here in this city. Of those, 56,000 have come home with physical injuries, and arguably between 300,000 and 500,000 have invisible wounds of war. We treat those injuries. We provide them opportunities to regain that sense of camaraderie and cohesion they had when they were in the military. And then after they heal, be it physical healing or emotional healing, we then provide opportunities for them with many of our partners on the stage here. Thank you, each of you, for opportunities to give back in jobs in the community. So we're in 25 locations around the country. We have 7,500 events every year. And then, of course, we have a plethora of programs and services for mental health, physical health and wellness, financial counseling, long-term rehabilitative care, and in-home care for those that have borne the greatest brunt of our nation's wars.
Yeah, it was neat to me. Just last Thursday, you were out in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, and I was able to participate.
What an amazing event! I mean, your Verizon teammates, your whole workforce showed up. It was an amazing event, and to take part in our Carry Forward event, meet some of our wounded veterans, and just see the inspiration of your workforce was, I'd say, it motivated all of us. So it was a great event.
Well, fantastic. Can I just pause for a moment on Wounded Warrior Project? I understand you all just released a recent survey. Can you tell us what that survey, who participated in it, what you learned from it?
Sure. So we survey our 100,000 warriors, 150,000 warriors every year. We get about a 30% response rate, which for a voluntary survey, that's pretty good. I participated in surveys in DOD that was mandatory and didn't have a 30% response rate. But our warriors want to give back, and they know that whatever they respond in that survey, that quickly drives our programs for the following year. And we're very quick to turn the results of the survey into programs that meet their needs. Obviously, isolation continues to be a concern, stigma around getting mental health care and access to care, and then treatment for invisible wounds, physical wounds, health and nutrition continues to be a problem. 50% of our warriors that we surveyed are unhealthy, overweight, or obese. Some of that is a national trend, but we're trying to get them healthy. We know that if the body's healthy, the mind heals quickly. So we're trying to get them in activities that help them heal. And then, financial education, financial resources and jobs is something we do as well. Not nearly to the scale that these gentlemen do, but that's our holistic approach.
For sure. And you pointed out, right, I mean, financial stability is a big part of kind of transitioning off. And I know that Alan, the USO, does a lot of work with transitions. Can you tell us a little bit about that in the Pathfinder program?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And maybe just step back a little bit about the USO writ large. I mean, transition is certainly one of the most important things we're doing today for our service members and their family as they transition out of their service. But really, the USO is about serving our service members from the day that they raise their right hand at a military entrance processing station through the times that they serve, all the way through the times that, and as well as their families, all the way through the time that they transition. So, we think about our mission at the USO as strengthening our service members by connecting them to their family, to their home, and to their country. And we do that through a variety of ways. Transition is certainly one of the most important things we do there. But, we have USO locations around the world, 220 plus. Places not only like Kansas, but also Korea and Kandahar. We're all over the world where our service members are deployed to ensure that we're providing them programs and services that help strengthen them. Again, through connecting them to things that remind them of home and actually connecting them directly to their home. So connecting them back to their families. Early stages of OIF, OEF, and the first Gulf War, so to speak, we were building large telephone banks. Today in 2019, it's about as many hotspots as we can put up to provide opportunities for those service members to connect home through Skype, as a for instance. We do a lot of expeditionary programming too, by making sure that we're not only providing these services in these fixed locations at USO centers, but we're deploying forward with those Army soldiers and those Marines as they deploy and exercise in operations far from their forward operating bases. We have that really a privilege through our relationship with the Department of Defense that allows us to go that far forward with them. We support our families, as I mentioned before, things like sponsoring great baby showers for service members that are expecting, or maybe spouses that are expecting and they're far from home, and we work with great organizations that help drive those type of family programs. And then finally, around transition, we've created a USO Pathfinder program for the last several years. We've been able to build sites that provide service members the opportunity to develop a case with one of our case managers that we call Pathfinder Scouts, and they can help them along dimensions of their transition, whether it's employment, education, VA benefits, housing, what have you. And then our logo, our USO logo has 6 stars on it. It talks about, and the reason why we have those 6 stars is because it's a collaboration of the first 6 nonprofits that came together to form the USO. And we collaborate today with all these great organizations, both with Wounded Warrior and with Hiring Our Heroes, to affect those missions. So around the world, that's what we're doing.
Fantastic, great. And we're a proud 2-star partner of the USO, so we, of course, love what you're doing. And I love the concept of, collaborating together, right? I do have to pause, though, because you guys are going to have to tell me how many push-ups I need to do for my alarms going off twice. Chuck, to you. So, you guys really, we have a relationship with Hiring Our Heroes, and, you focus on bringing jobs, right, to military and now to spouses, too. You just hit a significant milestone in terms of the number of jobs you've actually achieved for them. Tell us about the program, if you can, and tell us about the milestone.
Yeah, so we were created in 2011, back when veteran unemployment rate was hovering anywhere between 16 to 25%. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said if who we say we are, which is the connection to American business, we've got to do something to solve this. And so they initially started off with all it was traditional hiring fairs. So they did 1 year, over 250 events in 1 year all across this country with the sole purpose, as our title says, hiring our heroes, getting folks hired, singular purpose. We've since transitioned from that ourselves. As the veteran unemployment has gone back down, we've realized the biggest need are those folks, the 200,000 a year that are getting out of the uniform and transitioning. So we focus all our efforts now on that population, trying to educate them about what opportunities are out there, both from a job perspective as well as a location perspective. And then we also work with the companies. The companies like Verizon say, hey, we want to hire veterans. How do we get access to them? Well, we help with that access through the events that we do on these bases. So this year we just did over 60 events this year on military installations primarily, focused on that veteran population, but also on the military spouse side. So as we have shifted, we spend a lot of our effort now focusing on military spouses because they realize they're still at the 16 to 18% unemployment rate, which is pretty much unacceptable from our perspective in this country right now. So we do that through our events, education, and finally what we work with Verizon on for a number of years now is our corporate fellowship program, which takes service members while still on active duty, the last 6 months on active duty, and partners them with companies, lets them work for companies Monday through Thursday to basically learn about what it is to be a civilian or learn about those companies themselves. And we're super excited about that. We had close to 933 fellows this year go through the program with a 92% offer rate and an average salary of $92,000 a year. So we're super excited about that, and moving more excited about the military spouse piece that we've added that component going into 2020. So we'll hopefully put between 200 to 300 military spouses through that exact same program.
Well, congratulations. Those are amazing numbers. In fact, we have a fellow in the audience with us today. So hiring a heroes fellow, we love the program. Tommy, you really kind of have developed that at Verizon. And I think one of the things that's interesting is having a dedicated military recruitment team, which you lead. Tell us why that's important and why other companies should consider having that if they don't now.
Well, I think one is Verizon invested in, and that's a really important focal point to understand that our leadership made a decision that they were going to invest in HR and hiring veterans and putting veterans into HR to help them navigate through the transition and through the pipeline. So without that, none of this really happens, right? The relationships that we have and the opportunities we're able to help educate hiring managers and get people behind hiring veterans and military spouses is started from leadership, right? I mean, they invested in it. So it's easy to invest outside, but they did it internally, which says a lot about our culture at Verizon and what we're trying to do. We believe in putting our money where our mouth is and really being the example of what we're trying to do. So that's one thing I'm extremely proud of. The other thing is I think we're a communications company, right? I mean, we are a telecommunications company. We are a technology company. We provide a lot of the solutions that the organizations need. USO, we have some services that help get to the people around the world. So having a dedicated military recruitment team, what's really important about that is being able to have them help. They've all been in their shoes. Every one of the people on my team are not only veterans and military spouses, they're combat veterans. They've been where they've wore the same boots. They've been in the same situations and they know the examples, right? So they can speak on their behalf. They're their liaison. So and the last part I'll say about that is that they're the experts in helping people that don't have any experience to military service understand really what military service is and what those occupations bring to the company.
That's fantastic. That's good stuff. And so hopefully companies that don't have a dedicated military recruiting team will consider adding one. So I think now we're looking at, thank you for our panel for this great discussion. We've got a couple questions, 2 questions from the audience if we have them.
Hello. So you guys were talking about earlier how you found that maybe people who have served the war get into they get interested into other things. Is there anything fascinating that maybe some of the people you've worked with found interest in things that they may not have found without this program?
Well, I think, I always love the examples. We've got infantry guys. So the infantry guy, obviously, close with and destroy the enemy is their job title. And then when they get out, and these guys are IT guys now, that their true passion, they sit down and say, hey, I want nothing more but to be an IT bubba. And say, well, how do you take the skills you learn in the infantry and apply that to being IT? And so we've been able to see it through multiple different programs to get them trained and becoming IT guys. And it's amazing. Again, if you looked at the person on paper and said, that person's going to be the next IT superstar? No, he's not. There's no way that's going to happen based on that resume. But they get in there and they attack it the same they would any other mission they've got in the military and are just killing it. So between Verizon, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, you name it, it's fascinating to me to see the number of folks who've transitioned to the IT world that, again, if you looked at them face value, you'd never think that would happen.
Right.
Thank you.
And I think that's a great question, too. And Chuck hit it. You never know. Sometimes we try and shoehorn people that, you know, okay, I was an engineer in the military, so we want to hire them into an environmental engineer position or an engineer position. Sometimes they want to do something different. Because if you think about it, think of the number of first-term service members that re-enlist for a different MOS because they want to learn something different, be challenged by something else. So don't assume because the person had this military skill that automatically translates to something that they want to do. It may be something that they're qualified to do, but it may not be where their interest is. So we try and work through that in the you know, processing, you know, the resume building and the connection with other corporate partners that want to partner with us, but get them in something they're interested in, not something that we think is right for them.
My favorite guys are the medical folks. The medical folks, they go, hey, I'm a medical guy. Hey, I got 10 jobs for you. Where do you want to live? I got these jobs for right now. And the response is, I never want to see a drop of blood or a snot-nosed kid ever again. You know, I want to go off. I said, what do you want to do? Well, I want to go off and be a supply chain management guy. Oh, wow, okay, let's go figure that out for you.
Right.
I think one other point of this, too, because I agree with both of you on that, the other dimension to think about, though, is folks make their transition. Oftentimes, they feel a little bit of a rush to say, hey, I need to go get that job right away. So I'm going to fall back on my MOS or the skills that I've had. Maybe I was a truck driver. Maybe I was a medical service provider, and I'm going to find that job and get into that. And, you know, anytime you make a transition, whether it's in the from a service or, you know, just in the middle of someone's career, it's difficult, but trying to take the time to deliberately think about what is it that you really want to do? What are the things that you've experienced in your life? What are the strengths that you have in your own basket? And what do you want to drive towards? And take that time. And so, you know, oftentimes, whether, particularly in the service, we have a really great opportunity to mentor our service members that are making their transition out. Certainly there's opportunities for folks in those employee resource groups to do that at companies. And just, there's a lot of great organizations. We're starting to do some mentoring around spouses as they make their transitions. So I would say that, you know, on the one hand, you do have a lot of folks that say, hey, I just want to try something new. But I also want to make sure that we're not allowing someone to just not go for something new after they've, when they've got that opportunity for a transition. And I've seen that happen for folks making their first transition after their first enlistment contract, all the way up to folks, senior officers making their transition after 20, 25, 30 years. And it's an opportunity now to really drive to something new in your life.
Yeah, if you would have asked me, 6.5 years ago, if you would have asked Tommy or told me you're going to be in HR, anybody that knew me would have said, heck no, that is not going to be Tommy.
Yeah, can
right?
Tommy spell HR?
Yeah, I couldn't even spell it. Exactly. I mean, I was in the Army. I couldn't spell that. But yeah, well, that's an example of it. I mean, I definitely would have never thought. I'm doing recruiting. At one time in my career, I was a drill sergeant, which is weeding people out of the military, right, and training them to be successful. So
The hardest question in the world when you ask a veteran is, I ask all the time, what do you want to do? And the response I normally get is, I can do it all.
Right.
You just give me a mission, I'll accomplish that mission. I've been working in ambiguous situations with lack of resources my entire career. You just give me a task and I can accomplish that task. I say, cool, let's get on LinkedIn and type in the title, I can do it all.
Right.
And it doesn't exist, so you've got to actually you have to pick a career field or pick an industry to go after. In that case, it's very difficult sometimes for these guys to figure that out.
Fantastic. We have another question from the audience.
Hi, I was wondering how people can get more involved with Hiring Our Heroes and also help spread awareness about the program.
Yeah, sure. So our calendar's about to come out. Our 2020 calendar's about to come in over soon. Close to 40 events on bases, Okinawa, Europe, all across the United States. We always take volunteers who want to come out and assist us in the process from an in-processing perspective. From company side of the house, Tommy knows this, resume review, mock interviews, all those things that we often reach out for folks and say, come in and be a mentor, be a coach for some of these service members who are transitioning out. That's the best way to get involved. And then for companies, come on in. I say the price of entry to be part of Hiring Our Heroes is have a job. If you got a job you're hiring for, then come to our events. We'd love to have you.
I was just going to say one last thing. So what I love about the military community is even when you have other companies that have the same business initiatives, we're all level in this area, right? So, we work side by side with our competitors in this space for the greater good of the community, helping veterans and military spouses find employment opportunities. So that's one thing that I'm extremely proud of, that, you know, we have these really competitive markets when you start talking about like our competitors. And we don't do that in this space, right? They have the same mission as us, which I'm really excited about. And I think, you know, you guys are the recipient of that too from some of our competitors as well. So I think it goes to say that, you know, that's the service after service, right? Self-serving other people. So.
Well, I want to thank our panel here today, Tommy Jones, Chuck Hodge, Alan Reyes, and Mike Linnington. We really appreciate not only your service, but as you continue to show us by role models, your service after service. Thank you so much, and happy Veterans Day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.